Um, okay, guys. So first of all, sorry, but I will be also invisible. Not to jeopardize my connection, since I think that my connection is a bit capricious. So you will just hear my voice and not my face. You won't see it. Voila. So for the moment, everyone is here, and we have just one person in the waiting room. So maybe we can take one more minute if you like, if you have questions before we start. If not, but we'll just have our panel as agreed in the order of presentations we agreed upon a few months ago. Tac, Elias, I guess about your video, maybe things will be. Maybe Elias, look and check the chat box. Maybe can you upload this video somewhere else? I don't know.
Yeah, I'll be in touch with Daniel. So
Okay, so you can manage it. I guess we have enough time before your turn. You are the last, but the last presenter. But okay. So, if everyone is ready, I guess we can maybe start since it is time. Okay, so we go. I will let people in. So makeup, smile, everything is okay. Ready to go. Presentations are burning. Everything is ready. Let's present our works.
there's one person waiting in the room.
Da.
Okay, you see? Dinara Turalova.
Mm.
There you go.
Ok. Vote. C'est parti. Bon, it's not exactly a good Aitysh since we are not attracting crowds, but maybe they will join later. Anyway, so it's a kind of no countryside Aitysh for the moment. So, okay, хорошо. So let's start officially this. Let's open this panel. Hello everyone, welcome. So let's start with a small presentation. In this panel, we aim at exploring the evolving status of Akyns, so oral poets and improvisational performance in Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and China, mostly focusing on how their traditional art form, so Aitysh or aitys, is shaped by state policies, censorship, folklore preservation, frameworks, and digital media. So this panel will bring together empirical insights from recent festivals over the last 5 years, media archives, fieldwork, and cultural policy documents. So it will compare the political functions, aesthetic strategies, and institutional framings of akyn performances in 3 different states. So we will also raise broader questions related and regarding, let's say, this oral tradition. How do oral traditions adapt in authoritarian or semi-authoritarian context? Where's the boundary between performance, protest, and spectacle? And finally, what does the transformation of bardic traditions tell us about contemporary Central Asian societies and their pluralisms? So we will have and invite comparative and interdisciplinary perspectives on oral poetry, censorship, and cultural continuity in a post-Soviet and transnational context. So to do so, we have several participants. I will start with me. Unfortunately, I am the first to present today. My name is Julian, teacher at TSI outside Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. Then we'll have a presentation by Akyny Otkulbek-Kızı from Tsukuba University, Japan. for a presentation on an article written in collaboration with Asem Kalkamanova, Mahmut Narokbayev University, Kazakhstan. We will have also Jan Brozobohate from Palaski Olomouc University, Czech Republic. Jan, I hope my pronunciation was okay. And finally, Ilyas Mamadierov from Inalco University, France. But welcome to you for this wonderful panel about Akyns and Aitysh in Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and China from different perspectives. Okay, so. Mon Dieu, I should start. Just let me find my presentation. So I repeat, I will just give a kind of overall, let's say, introduction to this panel and to this topic, so that you will have more time to present your own results, which are much more interesting, much more, let's say, no, interesting because you are using different perspectives on this topic. Where is my presentation? It is here. Okay. So I repeat, I will keep myself invisible for the moment due to my unsteady connection. Alors, what? Tac, is it visible? I guess so. Все хорошо? Okay. So what I will just give a small introduction. I will basically mostly frame my work, my introduction to Kyrgyz Akyns, so to Kyrgyzstan. So I will start from something general dealing with verbal duels or dueling. So let's say such kind of oral tradition historical overview in Kyrgyzstan. I will briefly speak about the two UNESCO inscriptions. And finally, we will have an overview of some cases in Kyrgyzstan and the relations between Akyns and presidents over the last 5 years. So verbal duels are, let's say, quite common all around the world in different societies. So here you have an example of Tsatista in Cyprus and below the famous Didong in Indonesia. I will use to start the work of Valentina Pagliai, who published a very interesting overview of verbal duels all around the world in 2009. So she started first, let's say, together or to discuss the general definitions we give to verbal duels. So as you can see on the left, most of the definitions agree on the fact that verbal duels leave basically a room for the conflicts in the society to get resolved, to be developed. It's basically a room for, let's say, outburst of violence, of chaos, but just temporary chaos in a social organization. She also highlighted the fact that verbal duels for Western scholars are also interpreted as a way to compensate the lack of Western-style law system. So basically through the duels, let's say small societies, communities can solve their problems. And it is considered by Western scholars as something, maybe in some ways, as something primitive, as something folkloric, in which small social groups, ethnicities can solve their problems in the boundary of the society. And finally, after, let's say, criticizing such kind of broad but also specific definitions, mostly revolving around the question of violence in society, question of aggressivity, she moved and she proposed such a definition. to maybe consider verbal duels as a genre of argumentative language that entails exchanges between two persons, parties, or characters that challenge each other to a performative display of verbal skillfulness in front of an audience. So as you can see, she basically put aside all this question of aggressivity, conflict, maybe criticism also, in order to focus on mostly two things or three. First, the question of argumentation in the speech. Second, I would say the fact that you have two parties facing one another. And finally, this question of skill and mastering in the language, and maybe the fourth point, in front of an audience. And it is more or less what we have in the definition provided by the French specialist of Kyrgyz culture, Rémi Dor, who basically provided this broad definition of Aitysh. He had not in mind exactly the Aitysh we will speak about today, but let's say all the kinds of Aitysh we have or he could witness in Kyrgyzstan, for example, Adat, Aitysh, and such kind of things, or Aitysh you have during weddings and so on. So, as you can see, he insists on the competitive character of this competition. Also, he highlights the fact that two individuals represent two ethnic, social, or gender groups. And finally, that the Aitys is something that goes fast and that the one who runs out of words loses. So it's a kind of game competition on which two poets already agreed on the form or the words or the speech, the argument they will deal with. Um, so it is something obvious, of course, but let's say from the very first times during, let's say, when Western scholars started to get interested in Central Asia and Siberia, alongside, let's say, with the colonization from the Russian Empire, they paid a lot of attention to the importance of improvised poetry in the social life of the people. So Radlov is one of them, for example. So in Kyrgyzstan, we use, let's say, I guess, this concept of Tukmö akyn, or let's say PV improvisator, the poet improvisator. So someone who masters poetry live, in live performances, someone also who is able to answer back, let's say, to their opponents. Aitysh do exist today. They still exist today. They are, let's say, kind of international or national scale competitions. And they are judged, let's say, by a board, mostly a board of academics. And the winner is rewarded most of the time in cash. So I recently read that they can be rewarded up to 3 million Kyrgyz soms today. So which is something like 30,000 USD, if I do not mistake. I will use also the word of Mustafa Joshkun, who wrote a PhD dissertation on this topic, focusing on the use of this oral tradition in Soviet times. And I guess it's quite interesting today to reflect on this question of patronage, since, let's say, before the revolution, Akyns were, of course, traditional intellectuals, but were also hired by tribal leaders to spread their legitimacy in order to be like a bridge between them and the local population. And that's very interesting that this traditional mean of communication, let's say this tradition was used by the new power, the Soviet power, in order to spread another culture, the socialist culture and other values, let's say, within the population. So alongside, let's say, this phenomenon, let's not forget the appearance of specific institutions, for example, philharmonics, so Philharmonia, and the creation of ensembles of poets. Also, let's keep in mind that this phenomenon impacted also the national epic Manas, since, for example, the great Manas Chisaek by Karalayev was also a professional singer at the Philharmonie of Bishkek in the 1930s until the 50s. Also, the Soviet power made a good use of one specific akyn, Toktogul Satelganov, who mostly became legendary after his death in 1933, since he represented someone, a poet, oppressed by the, let's say, the colonial administration, the Russian colonial administration, and the Kyrgyz elites of the time, so the beys, and so on. Someone who spent years in exile and labor camps, and someone after that who was raised as Akyn Democrat during Soviet times as a representative of the free poet, the one who is able to, on the side of the population, the one who can also spread the good words of socialism. So let's move forward in times. It's also something on which we will come back during this session. The fact that Akınduk is now registered inscribed at the UNESCO at least twice. We can basically find a first inscription in 2003, but let's say that since this original list was deleted, most of the time we use the date of 2008, but we have to keep in mind that it was registered earlier in times. So in the name of Kyrgyzstan only, and it is very interesting to notice that Manas, the Manas epic, and Manaschi were also involved into, let's say, this general inscription. So Manas was a part of the art of Akyns, Kyrgyz epic tellers. Let's also notice that Manas was inscribed twice, first in 2009 in the name of China and a few years later in the name of Kyrgyzstan. In the same logic, not only Akyns but Aitysh, the art of improvisation, was inscribed both by Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan in 2015. So that's very interesting that in the definition, the presentation of this inscription, of this cultural item, they highlight the fact that poets can criticize all kinds of vices and raise up specific topical problems of social life. So we will, I guess, come back on this later in some presentations. So the relations between poets and, let's say, the political power. So we can start with this very famous case dating back 2020 with the famous icon Arle Tuktuchev, born in 1983, who during the Independence Day in this year, 2020, criticized Jembekov's policy, criticized the corruption of the government, and so on, and expressed also personal ideas how to improve, let's say, this situation, believing that the digitalization would help eradicate corruption. So below you have two comments of former President Jembekov, in which, as you can see, he does not criticize Tuktuchev's words, but is mostly supporting, let's say, this poet as a representative of one tradition, a tradition which has the right to criticize, let's say, the power and bring solutions. And I guess on the left, we have something like that the Akyn, the poet, is also going in the same vein as Jembekov's policy. Jembekov wanted also to improve the system. The poet proposed one solution which goes along Jembekov's policy. So it's nice to see that criticisms and alliances also go together in this case. However, here we have something quite specific and maybe exceptional, since the situation we have over the last few years is a bit different. For example, you have 4 cases of 3 Akyns and 1 Manaschi. The first one, the famous Bolot Nazarov, who was put in jail in 2022. Then Asrat Jetigen, who was highly critical of the government about gambling and the imprisonment of activists and so on, now free on bail. Azamat Ishenbekov, still in custody right now. And maybe we can add, let's say, to this list, Monastir Dolotsedekov, who lived in exile in Russia, in Moscow, for 2 years due to a personal conflict with the president, Sadir Japarov. But on the other side of the coin, here you recognize Ale Tuktuchev, who was awarded National Poet by President Zhedbekov a few months ago. So that's very interesting to see how everything is all the time moving, shifting, changing. What the relations between the power, the political power in general, and poets. So some conclusions, maybe it could be interesting now, let's say in the contemporary context, in what we can observe right now in Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan, to pay attention to the patronage. Let's say, can we support Josh Kuhn's statement and say that, let's say, Aitysh became a kind of marketing, became a marketing product, a cultural product, let's say, in both countries. We used to say that Akyns are the voice of the people, but can we say, are they also the voice of the audience? Which audience? Or the voice of the state? Or whose voice, basically? Who are they representing? So basically, they have a kind of shifting nature. We can't, let's say, put in one specific category. They are, let's say, between categories or in several categories at the same time. Can we still speak about freedom of speech today? Can we say everything? Yes, no, as long as it does not involve politics? Question mark. Also, who is the Akyn today? The Akyn Democrat, like with Toktogul, the Akyn instructor, so with Ilyas and the National Bank of Kyrgyzstan, or maybe the Akyn something else. So basically the different labels we can put on Akyns. And finally, what can, let's say, the comparison between Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan bring us? Do we have exactly the same situations, evolutions or not? And what can the situation in Kazakhstan help us understand about the situation in Kyrgyzstan and vice versa? So, sorry, I was quite long, really, but anyway, we'll have time for the conversation, for discussion after. So thank you very much for your attention. So according to the plan, we should now, I will leave the floor to Akyns. If you are ready, you can share your screen. Ryan, yes. 1 second, Akyns. Ryan, yes, you wanted to say something?
Oh, sorry, no. I hit the applause button. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, yes, he's still alive. Хорошо. Okay, thank you very much. So Akyns, I guess you can share your screen and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. All right. So my name is Akyns Kobyakkuzu. I will be presenting an article that I co-authored together with Asyam Kalkamanova, and it's titled "Voices of Dissent: A Comparative Study of Aitysh in Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan." So we all know the definition of Aitysh. It's basically a public competition based on oral improvisation between poets, as we see on this photo, to improvisational poets, as we also call Akyns. These people they provoke each other to engage in a debate. They speak on behalf of the common people, and they publicly criticize decision makers for their wrongdoings or some social injustices. And they also do this with in the accompaniment of traditional musical string instruments, dombra and Kyrgyz komus. And historically, Aitysh emerged from nomadic lifestyle predominantly because it was the knowledge had to be transmitted orally and stored orally, and this is how the oral improvisational art came about. And this is the historical root of akyn skill. And they were the Aitysh itself as a platform was made for expressing a claim to a ruler or to voicing concerns. And performing akyns, they were expected to tell the truth and not get punished for it. They had this public immunity for their overt resistance. And there are some Kyrgyz and Kazakh proverbs that say there is no death for a messenger and a singer. You can behead a person, but you cannot cut their tongue out. Aitysh and political participation. In the literature, we see that Aitysh was mostly viewed as a form of oral literature in folklore studies and as art, music, as a tool of communication, also information channel, and as nomadic institute. But in this article, we tried to look at it from the perspective of civic engagement, activism, and resistance. And in today's Kazakhstan, for akyns, for poets, it was common to transition into professional politics. And they were also seen as celebrity politicians. And in 2023 parliamentary elections, we could see that some of them actually entered parliament. In Kyrgyzstan, however, the situation is different. Akyns traditionally strive to remain neutral, and it's widely understood that taking an active political role undermines akyns' reputation and their neutrality. And resistance in Aitysh. We used the theories of Hollander and Einwohner. They say that the two key elements of resistance are action and opposition, where action can be anything that is verbal, cognitive, or physical, and opposition arises when there's countering, questioning, rejecting, or contradicting. And overt resistance refers to deliberate acts by individual, in our case akyns, that are recognized as opposition by targets and observers. So this way, resistance is conceptualized as an act that is both intentional by akyns and recognized by the targets, by decision makers. So this is how we framed resistance in our article. And the sources for operationalization of opposition is the thematic content of akyns, public critique of leadership and policies, and the immediate reactions that akyns would get from the audiences and decision makers. And the deliberate practice of Aitysh, we could find the covert resistance and overt resistance within Aitysh. The covert one is akyns' use of satire, humor, metaphors, proverbs, anything that is not direct, also combining it with overt resistance that is characterized by deliberate visibility of dissent. According to Hollander and Einwohner, overt resistance is based on intentionality, as I mentioned, and recognition. So we base intentionality in the very participative nature of Aitysh, and akyns' choice of themes and critique and metaphors as a deliberate act. Also recognition, we recognize it as recognition when it is done so by targets, observers, and because of its historical role. We also used Foucault's discursive power, that akyns use their speech as a practice of discursive power. We recognize that Aitysh as a platform itself can be a discursive arena where Akyns use it with their poetry to voice public concerns, to shape cultural and national narratives, and to engage in power and resistance dynamic. Akyns mostly act as intermediaries, voices of the people, as they call themselves. They negotiate critique, self-censorship, and influence within accepted cultural boundaries. So this is where we focused in the second element. And there's also public accountability. Live performances they have this immediate feedback loop with the audience, because they can shout out some quick responses as their reaction to let the Akyns know that it resonates with them or if it doesn't. And Akyn and Aitysh can also be further maybe looked through these lenses, cultural heritage as resistance, because the very language, the very discourse they create to pass meanings, to create meanings even, are done so through cultural symbols. For example, they might say, let's expand the population of the country, but they would say this with this meaning, but using the elements of the yurt, for example. So it's done so using a completely different language. So our research question was, does Aitysh represent a deliberative practice, a civic engagement? And to answer that, we used the cases of Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan to compare and to see whether it serves as a platform for civic engagement. And we did 12 in-depth interviews in 2023, 2024. Participant observation was done only in Bishkek. And here we see the location of where Aitysh was organized and conducted. In case of Kyrgyzstan, we see that it was predominantly in biggest cities of like capital city Bishkek and Osh several times a year. And it was done so primarily because of two reasons. First, because there were very few Akyns in the regions. This is what Akyns said. And they said there's only 2 from Batken and there is 4 from Issyk, so it would be hard to organize regional Aitysh. And the second reason was the logistics, that they lack concert halls that could host Aitysh on decent level. In case of Aitysh in Kazakhstan, there were 30 Aitysh organized in 2023. Mostly, you can see here that they were done so in smaller towns and villages. Almaty and Astana included, the biggest cities, but mostly they were done in remote areas. And my co-author was based in Astana, so she could not do participant observation in these remote areas. And here we see the role of Akyns, how they were perceived by Kazakh and Kyrgyz Akyns. Here we combined everything that was mentioned by the Akyns themselves, and we see that it's almost identical with a bit of differences. For example, in Kyrgyz Akyns said that both sides, they see themselves as voice of the people, but Kyrgyz Akyns put a stronger highlight on the fact that an Akyn should come from common people, that he is or she is a representative of common people. And balance keepers was also mentioned by Kyrgyz Akyns. Kazakh Akyns said they are the propagators of high moral values and providers of spiritual food, and spiritual enrichment, enrichment of souls was also mentioned. We are those who make people think, they said, enlighteners of people, uplifters. So maybe different words were used, but the meaning is quite similar. Next, we see that here we see a bit of a difference. Kyrgyz Akyns mentioned peacekeeping. They said, we are one of those who which means we are one of the peacekeepers, if translated roughly. And they would always say this and end their sentence with, even though we have the power to incite people. So, and ancestral knowledge, traditions were mentioned in both cases. And here, one of the biggest differences between Kyrgyz and Kazakh Akyns is that Kyrgyz Akyns would not associate themselves with activism, while Kazakh Akyns could say, I am an activist. But when asked, who do you see yourself as? What is the role of Akyns? They would mention all these things. And if asked, do you consider yourself an activist? Kazakh Akyns would always say yes. Kyrgyz Akyns would never say yes. So we see that the image of activists as radical protesters in Kyrgyzstan influenced the perception of activism among Kyrgyz Akyns. And Kazakh Akyns were not afraid of identifying themselves with a group of civic activists. Their perception of civic activism encompassed social influence and publicity. And as for the themes raised in Aitysh, we see that in Kazakh case, it was mostly local issues and local challenges. And they communicated this directly with the representatives of the regional authorities, who would often come and be among the audience in Aitysh. As for Kyrgyz Akyns, they covered a wide range of topics, from daily life, economic progress, social welfare, political dynamics to government performance, and even including like comments on ongoing protests. And for example, in 2023, the themes in Kyrgyzstan revolved around gender issues, Kyrgyz-Kazakh border-related topics such as trucks in traffic and water issues. Here we see Akyns' approach towards civic expression. You can see the comments, the quotes by the Akyns. Most of them said that, and we see three major concepts that we could pick up on. Impartiality, similarly to the proverb. It wasn't a proverb. This was a proverb which was quoted by an Akyn. He said, "Don't make a poor man's daughter cry by trying to make a rich man's daughter laugh." By this, they meant don't hurt one side's feelings by trying to please the other side. So impartiality was raised. The second was fact-checking. They mentioned that they like to research and validate the problem before raising it. So they felt the responsibility of raising an issue. So they felt the need to research. And face-saving was also observed, no harsh language. One of them said, "I try to refrain from complaining and criticizing. Why? Because for me, truth does not come from denigrating someone. I don't believe I can uncover the truth by tarnishing someone's reputation." So we could see that the activism was not seen as me against the government dynamic, but I am between the people and the government. I want to save the reputation and the face of both sides. And risks and dangers of Aitysh in Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan. Self-censorship was common among both Akyns. And in both cases, we could see that they refrained from very sensitive political topics. And also, according to Kyrgyz Akyns, they said in their discourse, in speaking manner, they felt safe only when they stayed within Akyndic within Akyndic style of speech. When they spoke like investigative journalists, they risked arrest, and they used covert language in overt public spaces. And this allowed them to navigate complex situations. And one of the examples of self-censorship in 2023, one of the Kyrgyz Akyns, he said, "There is no friendship in politics." And contextually, everyone understood that this was the case with the president and the head of the Kyrgyz security service, but he immediately followed it with, "I'd rather hold my tongue so that not to become a neighbor of Olcay Shakir," a person who was arrested. And however, many Akyns, Kyrgyz and Kazakh, they claim that publicity, the overt resistance element, acts as a shield from different attacks. They say, "As I'm always in public eye, they cannot put pressure on me." So in conclusion, we see that Aitysh as a platform remains as an avenue for artistic expression and societal critiques in both countries. and it also serves as a tradition-sanctioned avenue to voice concerns. Overt resistance has provided some degree of security and immunity to Akyns, but even with that, we could observe some arrests in Kyrgyz Aitysh. And they navigate between critique and conformity using their roles of intermediaries and historical mediators. However, state cooptation and self-censorship shapes its limits. This is it from my side. I will stop here.
Thank you very much, Akyns, for this very interesting presentation. So it was a good comparison and very interesting, comprehensive comparison between Akyns and Aitysh in Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan. The common points and differences. I just wrote down a few questions that I will ask later.
Did we lose Julien? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Aitys.
Okay, I think we lost Julien. Going to write him on chat. Oh, he's coming. He's coming back. Okay, I missed it. He wrote me, Jan, you can start. He wrote. So you
Okay,
can go
okay,
ahead.
great.
I'm sorry.
No problem, no problem. So I will share my presentation. So can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So and the presentation is also visible, right? Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So I am Jan Brzobohatý from Palacký University in Czech Republic, and today I will speak about Akyns and aitys or Aitysh performances in China. I wrote my bachelor thesis some years ago about comparison of Akyns in Kazakhstan and in China. So I'm very happy that after some years there is this panel, and I really would like to thank Julian to as the main organizer coming with this idea. So today I will mention something more about the context of aitys in China, because it's not so well known, and where does it take place. Then I will say a few words about like the history of Akyns and aitys in Xinjiang, in part of China. And basically, I divided the aitys in China as like institutional or staged aitys, and then like lived aitys. So I will describe those two, and I will also mention something about my field work, which I've done about a month ago here in China. So, of course, as was mentioned in previous presentations, aitys and akyn belongs to Kyrgyz or Kazakh culture. Here, I just concentrated on the Kazakh aitys and akyns in China. It's part of like Kazakh cultural heritage. So of course it's connected with the Kazakh minority in China. There are about 1.5 million people. So basically those aitys take place in that part of China where Kazakh people live. For your information, there is this Iri Kazakh autonomous prefecture in the northern part of Xinjiang. It's basically on the border with Kazakhstan, and I will mention that it's this prefecture is made up of 3 districts. One of them, like the most southern one, is Iri. Then we have Tkachkun or Tarbagatai, and the one in the north is Altai. So I'll mention it later. These 3 districts, for example, in the district of Iri, there is a city called Kulja or Ining, where I did my fieldwork. So this is just for the information. And of course, Julian asked me to bring all the terms also in Chinese. So if you'd like to search any books or articles, you can find really a lot if you use these like aitys, aitys, these characters, or akyn, akyn. So that's it. Here's something about the history of akyns and aitys in Xinjiang. So it's a first documentation, like written documentation we have from early 20th century. It was made by Jusibek Shahislamuli, who migrated to China and was a very well-known collector of epics and also took part in many aitys. I would like to mention here 2 people who really were like the fathers of aitys or of like oral epics in this part of China, this part of Xinjiang. And this was Akit Ulimzhuli, very famous religious kind of leader, teacher, and also person who really took part in many aitys in the Altai region, so in the northest part of Xinjiang. Then we have Tanjarek Jolduli, or in Chinese, Tang Jia Le Ke Zhulei Di, who was born in China, also in the region of Xinjiang, Ili region of Xinjiang, but he spent some part of his life also like in nowadays Kazakhstan, and migrated many times from nowadays Kazakhstan to China. He was part of the Alash movement. That's very interesting information. Then he was imprisoned by the Kuomintang government. And for a very long time, he was seen as martyr, and therefore, like also in communist China, his legacy and other akyns were kind of popular because of his legacy and his fate. Here we can see the tomb and also museum of Tanjarek Jolduli, near of the city of Kulja or Ining. Just here we can see that it's written, of course, in Chinese characters, but also in Baitur Simule script, which is used by Kazakh people in China. So there is, of course, no Cyrillic script. Sometimes it's complicated to search for sources, but this is the reality of Kazakh people in China. So here we have first part of aitys, and this is, I call it staged aitys or institutional aitys. The thing is that, of course, Chinese government, in official discourse, they say aitys is like part of Kazakh heritage, or especially last 10 years, as there is like the Belt and Road Initiative, they call it like culture treasure of the Silk Road. So it means like this little like marginalization of this term, and because there are like other minorities, of course, in Xinjiang, like Uyghur people, Hui people, and so on. Nevertheless, many of aitys were kind of transformed into books and published. Nowadays, there are like 50 volumes maybe. And lots of people, including like Kazakh people in China, took part in the translation projects. Of course, there is this policy of folklorization. So it means that the aitys is framed more like the ethnic heritage. So it's something like, I don't know, like national clothes, for example, and not as a space for public argument. Usually there are like small performances in some museums or in some like cultural places. For example, here we can see one photo. When you can see, it's like very standardized, I would say. So people who kind of do the aitys, it's of course it's like prepared. They have to wear the most traditional clothes. Usually it's also in some yurta, so it's like the main means of it is like to show that this is like the Kazakh culture and not actually express some of the opinions or like criticisms or having this competitiveness itself. Definitely, there are lots of resources in China, also in written form. There are lots of books, for example, like this one. It's like a selection of aitys, or there are lots of books which describe kind of the history of aitys, not only in China but also in Kazakhstan. So I think this is of course we need to observe what's written there, but definitely this would be a great source of like more information which could be analyzed in the future. So I mentioned these small performances, but there are also bigger performances which take place in like cities. There is some stage, therefore I call it like stage aitys, or in grasslands, which we can see here. So it's not like aitys like maybe people meet and compete. It's more like some culture program, culture event. You can see thousands of people go there. It's also sometimes broadcasted in the TV. And what's important to mention is not only aitys, but it's like it's something like show. So you have part of it is like aitys, part of it is like some dance, part of it is maybe some singers sing like traditional songs, modern songs. Sometimes even there are like more minorities. So it's like mixture, and it kind of lacks like the special, I would say, the special essence of the thing that it's like the thing which has, for example, in Kazakhstan or Kyrgyzstan. But there is also, I would say, more uh, mm, uh, liberal way of aitys, or lived aitys, I call it like that, which usually takes place in community settings in rural areas among like local people, or mostly students in regions of Altai, so in the north, or Ili, the south of the place where Kazakh community lives. I read about a very interesting process. Usually it started like Kazakh people, they feel it's like their legacy. So they have some informal training groups where they meet their teachers or people who kind of know how to play dombra and so on. And more people, of course, are interested. But once like a lot of people start to be interested, of course, also government starts to like be more interested in the whole process. So it's made a formal training group from this informal. Usually, it's made at like some research or aitys society is based. Some people come there who say, okay, so you will sing now, and we write down what you sang, and we produce it and we publish it. And so then these kind of people who did this lift aitys also become part of the stage aitys. For example, this is the life experience of Jakshili Khan or Saltanat Jumo Khan, two younger Akyns who initially sang about their life, like the poor conditions, but later also started to do this staged aitys. So they sang more about like social themes and also about education, for example, how they are kind of feel good that they have the opportunity, you know, to tell people the truth and so on. By the way, these dombras here are original dombras produced by some well-known master in Altai region. So this is like original. These are like original dombras from China. So now a little bit about my observation. I spent about a week in the city of Guja, or Chinese Yining. I wanted to truly see some ITCs, to listen to it, to speak with the people who kind of take part in it. It was in the period where usually lots of these cultural performances take place. But unfortunately, I could see only these staged ITCs, which were made of like multi-ethnic programs. For example, here we can see part of it. These are like Kazakh people. They had dance, and there was also akyn, but it was kind of prepared as you have concerts. So like the number one was some like Uyghur guy, number two was this like Kazakh akyn, then there was dance, and so on. I got information that in Tarbagatai, so in one of these Kazakh populated regions, there was some like heritage style performance in local museum. Probably it was like the one in the first photo, so like yurta and you know Kazakh traditional heritage, but unfortunately not real like competitive ITs. But I had a chance to speak with some local voices, with some people who really take part in this lift ITs, and this was very big experience for me, I have to say. So I got information that usually ITCs, like we know or like my colleagues described, take place in summer, usually from May until July in the countryside. Is not something illegal or prohibited, but also is not advertised. So it's like you have to know the people who organize it, or you have to really like live in the city, for example, that you have the access and you can go there and like really listen to the original form of ITs. Most of performances, most of trainers, most of people who try to become Akyns are in Altai region, in the comparison of Iri, for example, where it was like in the past. So now Altai region is like the leading in this. And what's interesting, of course, there are big distances among the districts. Some people live in the village, some people live in the city. So some social platforms or video calls are used for people kind of to sometimes even do the aitys, or I would say to let's say get a training from some masters. So in conclusion, I would like to mention that aitys in Xinjiang, we can see that it's seen as something like Kazakh heritage, so this like folklorized form. But it's also means of expressing belonging of Kazakh people that is part of their culture, and they naturally strive to take part in it, especially younger people. So I divided these ITCs like staged and lived ITs, but as we can see, there is also kind of intersection which needs to be studied more. Definitely, these traditions remaining meaningful for Kazakh people, and I think that's a very good point. So my main aim for the future is to map different forms of the tradition, which can take it in Xinjiang, and of course visit the local communities and properly listen to aitys. I would like to go to the Altai region next summer so that I can continue with my research. Okay, that's all from me, and I will stop sharing. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Jan. Thanks a lot for this very interesting presentation from these insights, let's say, in the Chinese Kazakh context in Xinjiang. No, I have also quite some questions for you after that, but I will ask them later after the presentation of Ilyas. So thanks that I hope you didn't work that much bringing in all the different scripts and other words. But as you mentioned, it helps, let's say, I would say the foreign scholars to look for information also. It helps a lot. I mean, to have the original script of, let's say, the keywords, what we are investigating. So thank you very much. I have, so we can leave the floor to Mr. Mamadiarov Ilyas with the last presentation.
Thank you, Julian.
About akyn and finance in Kyrgyzstan. So a case study.
Let me share
That is already, and for the video, we will try. If it works, it works. If not,
I think it will work. But I'm in touch with Daniel, and Daniel told me that he will show the video.
okay.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. My presentation is unfortunately it's not as empirical as Jan's and Akyns, but because it's the project I'm undertaking together with Julien. We've been working on this project, but I'm sure it can be treated as a complementary, as something additional, especially what Akyns has been talking about Akyns, because I will examine the financial and economic side of phenomenon of akyn, and many things in the presentation draws from a doctoral study that I did at INALCO about microfinance in Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan. So the context first, I will briefly go over the results of the economic neoliberal policy in Central Asia, specifically Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, because these are two markets where microfinance is one of the booming sectors. And I will also stop by the gender dynamics. And gradually I will go into I will examine the study, or I will show you the project that launched by National Bank of Kyrgyzstan using the voice of akyn in order to, in its attempt to increase the financial awareness of the population. and I will show you a short video script about the Akyns, Aitysh. And finally, if the time allows, I will stop by the idea of the trust and in the current economic paradigm, and how, especially this idea of Akyns, how it inspires, how it's intricately related with the notion of trust, the concept of trust. So economic neoliberalism context is that if you look at in Kazakhstan, the loaning of look specifically microcredit sector today, microcredit lion's share of the microcredit reasons of borrow microcredit in Kazakhstan is used for unforeseen expenses, motivation to borrow, or other to borrow the money in order to survive until the next pension, which is completely which doesn't reflect at all the philosophy of microfinance, because microfinance was initially created as something that would help people to use the loans to launch an entrepreneurial activity. That and that increased the lending and increased borrowing of microfinance. We are ending up in a situation where there's been a number of series of cases of the protests in Central Asia. If we look at, for instance, in Kazakhstan, there's been a recorded cases of protests in 2020, which skyrocketed in Kyrgyzstan too. And about these protests, I mean, these protests, they were not registered as something anti-debt, specifically anti-debt protests, but so one of the reasons, 20% of the, about 70% of the protests in Kazakhstan, they were related to the issue of salary. Now, these protests, they also correspond to what Sangera and Satibaldiva, this Badihar Sangera and Satibaldiva, two researchers, prominent researchers, they published in 2021 a book. It's called Rentier Capitalism in Central Asia, where they talk about how borrowers are exploited in this market, in banking, in the lending institutions actually exploit the borrowers, and they actually protest against these exploitative financial mechanisms which is present in lending institutions, among lending institutions. So some of the cases, couple of cases in 2021, there were in Kyrgyzstan women barricaded themselves in the government building, and they threatened to commit suicide by self-immolation unless the government takes measures to stop the activity of the lending institutions in Kyrgyzstan. In Kazakhstan, there was also a case in Astana in 2022 where a woman self-immolated because there was a series of women who became a victim of the Ponzi scheme, financial Ponzi scheme of Mudaraba Capital. We can talk more about it a little bit later when we talk about the notion of trust. Within this sector, lending sector, especially microfinance sector in Kyrgyzstan, we have majority of borrowers are women. It's been historically, it's been women were comprising the majority of the borrowers in the microfinance sector. Now, again, if we refer to the various authors, especially the book of Badihar Sangerens and Mirza Tibeli, their thesis is to say that women are being exploited in this sector, and due to their awareness of the lack of the knowledge, they can oftentimes end up in the cases of over indebtedness. So when the pressure of the debt actually disproportionately affects their well-being. This is also the case in Kazakhstan, actually. In fact, where if we look at the graph in Kazakhstan, women also comprise the majority of the borrowers. So that actually leads us to this growing inequality and the rising default among the borrowers. That leads us to this attempt that was launched by National Bank of Kyrgyzstan in 2019, in order to teach to combat the financial illiteracy of the population. So they used this the figure of Akyn. Akyn is well, we talked about how improvised poetry. They used to improvise poetry in video format, and the idea was to teach the population, the public, about this complicated complicated subjects such as monetary and credit policy, inflation, state budget. So they're all released. These videos are all available on YouTube. And Akyn, who was selected for this video, is Bayan Akhmatov. And you can see on the screen the dates that were released. They released this video, and the fifth video came in the form of Aitysh. What is striking about this using the voice of Akyn to combat the financial illiteracy is that we talked about it already. Akyn is a figure. Historically, Akyn could actually, without impunity, talk to the authority and say, criticize the authority for social injustice. And Bayan Akhmatov has another video that the title of it is Tajadik, We're Fed Up. But at the same time, Bayan Akhmatov, the Akyn is used by the National Bank, so the government is using again the same Akyn in order to teach the public about the financial terms. So there's an ambivalence and duality behind these paradoxes of this, the choice of this. Our research with Julien will aim to show that Akyn has this wide-scale reputation among the public. Akala actually talked about how Akyns actually cherish their reputation the idea of reputation and neutrality is something that is intrinsically related with the idea, the notion of trust in economics. And without going further, let's see just one excerpt from the video of Akyn. If Daniel can show that video. We'll see a short video of Akyns.
Are you guys listening?
Yes.
There is no
we
sound.
don't see anything. Do you see, guys?
I can
Yeah,
see,
there is-
but I can't hear.
Okay, sorry for that. I'll try again to share it.
Kara canım appağım, kara gözüm aktanım, köp sulunun içinin göksöp izlep tapkanım. Kuvalap cumuş dep kulu olduk akçanın, apamdın tuğulgan gün eken, al deylep meni bakkanın. Jürü kuttuktap geleli da açık kılıp doy asmanın, apama belek alala aylığımdın artkanın. Arzıbayt barım bersem dana, oldun ak sütün emip kaktadım.
Ey ak jarığım, oy akşamım, oy aytılıba bütpösi dastanım, oy erkeletip oy koygongo, ел жирең айтыштың oy акчаным, oy сактап койчуң дегенсиң, ey айлыгыңдын артканым, oy апамдын тулган күнүң экен, ай аны да унутуп таштадым. Каттырып койгон ой акчаңды эй косметикага ой сарптадым эй ой
Rızkımız üydөгүң ысырап болбой самандай Жума сайын тойлорго жулкуна бербей камандай Азык түлүк кийимдиң аздектейлиң адамдай Капчыгың үй бүлөнүн калбасынчы каралбай Кадырлууң атаң энеге калган жаман бара албай Кадырын билбей барында калбайлы боздоп таба албай Акчабыз ашып баратсаң акылга ал чабанан жай Бото көзүм ошондо ой чиркин боёносуң маралдай уй
I hope the subtitles were visible. Okay, so returning to the presentation, what this video conveys is the complexity of the notion of money. Can you hear me? Can you see the presentation still? Right? No? Okay, hold on. Oops.
Bottom right. Oh,
Okay, there you
that
go.
is okay.
Continue. Can you hear? Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Now it's
So
fine.
the video is what video conveys is that video conveys is how the phenomenon of money is a complex phenomenon, and in our study we utilize this. We use the approach of economics of conventions. And within economics convention, we have two prominent authors, George Simmel and André Orléans, who talk about especially André Orléans, who talks about the idea of trust. And if we look in the economics, how the underlying idea in the economics is, especially when it comes to the idea of trust, how can we ensure that the person A transacts with person B? So if we imagine a person A and person B, hypothetical situation to two persons, how can we ensure that the two collaborate within this abstract world? If we don't include anyone. So the challenge was that it's impossible to make two people to trust each other in order to interact with each other. And David Krebs, in 1990, he proposed an idea. He said to surmount this challenge, he said, if person A cares about his reputation, then person A will be interacting with person B. I'm not going to go into details of how the challenges are, because it will take more time. We have to save the time, but suffices to say that David Krebs said we need to look at the reputation of these two actors, independent economic actors, agents, and they care about their reputation. They're curious of their reputation. Since they care about their reputation, they will eventually collaborate. So that was the solution, and that was the economic orthodoxy. Now that solution has major incompleteness. One of the ways to solve that, what André Orléans proposed, was to look at the figure of deity, of religion. If actually we look, for example, this is the trust game proposed by Krebs, person A, person B. If two individuals, let's imagine two individuals, they trust, they actually the ones who practicing some kind of religion, and they are really pious followers of certain religion. One person actually will say, okay, another person will not renege to his promises. So this figure of religious figure of sanctity can ensure that the two independent actors can collaborate. And this pinpoints to the fact that first the figure of religion can actually interplay with trust, and secondly, collectivity also can play a really important role in the reputation. Because what is reputation? Reputation is nothing without, if we don't take into account the entirety of the market institutions. And when it comes to religion, Durkheim and Jean-Marie Thibault, they proposed this in-depth studies. Especially it was a sociologist, Emile Durkheim, who was examining the idea of the sanctity, how sanctity is a superimposed moral authority, and that universal, expected by every member of the society. But the André Orléans also says, emphasizes to overcome this problem of trust. Also, we need to look at the entirety of the market economy's members, so it's collectivity. So when it comes to the Akyns, what our idea is to say that akyn is a figure that someone is that is critical of the authorities, and can be considered as a figure that enjoys or that has extensive trust next to the population. So therefore, it was one of the key figures that was employed by the National Bank. For one of the explanations why it was employed by National Bank in order to combat the financial illiteracy. But at the same time, this also pinpoints, unbeknownst to the National Bank of Kyrgyzstan, this also shows how the relations of money are not just limited to what the economics orthodox today portrays as it's simple relations of utility. We consume, a sovereign, a consumer, economic agent only seeks his own maximization of his own utility. It's not only about that, it's also collectivity plays an important role in this, and we can see in this figure of Akyn how this plays out. Well, thank you. That's all in my presentation. Okay.
John Rahmat, thank you very much, Elias, for your presentation. I can say a very exotic one, since you intertwined finance and this oral tradition we are all dealing with. So the one of Akyn and Aitysh. Nice that you gave us also an example of Aitysh in the frame of this National Bank of Kyrgyzstan video available on the internet, in which we have two performers, one male and one female, let's say arguing over the family budget. So, thank you very much. So let's say that's the end of the session. I mean, we have heard everyone. That was super cool. So I was happy to receive all the presentations. Everything is available in our folder. So if, let's say, each panel participant can check the work of others. I took some notes. I have also some new observations, remarks, questions for everyone, since I saw a lot of common points in all your presentations. I don't know if we have enough time. If you are free right now, officially we should end within 6 minutes, but maybe we can have more time for that, or we can also continue this conversation later, and so on. I mean, the future is open, but maybe I can share, let's say, a few thoughts, ideas. I guess that maybe one of the first questions I have is related to the audiences. For example, audiences for Elias. So the National Bank is it's the one who ordered such videos to be made, but we don't know exactly who the audience is in this case. It could be nice to check who watched this video, maybe to look around. And I mean, it's an old idea already. I already shared with you is that I guess we should get a meeting with the bank. Let's say to ask them about their this initiative, the reasons why they used, let's say, this specific tradition, this specific format of communication. I mean, that's very interesting. We can learn a lot of stuff. And Akyla, in your article that I read, you mentioned at one moment, let's say, the age demographic of the audience, the fact that they are, it seems, if I do not get mistaken, they are younger in Kyrgyzstan, and it's not exactly the case in Kazakhstan.
Yes.
It could be also interesting to know what are their motivations to attend such kind of shows, of performances. Maybe depending on the age, we have different motivations. Maybe the love for language. Maybe others will look for I would say maybe crunchy facts or maybe criticism. I don't know. Maybe everyone is looking for something different, for maybe a different pleasure, I would say. And Jan, I guess more or less the same question is that you mostly insisted, I mean, due to the specificity of the fieldwork, that we have more staged Aitysh performance than, I would say, maybe improvised, less folkloristic, but you told us that they do exist. So it could be nice also to check, to speak with some members of the audience, like why are they here? I hope they are not forced by the the state to attend such kind of cultural heritage style performances. And maybe, but if you have the chance, the opportunity to attend, I would say such kind of countryside informal Aitysh, to ask exactly the same questions, like why are they here? What do they expect? Voilà, just maybe it can bring new ways of reflection in our three countries. Let's say Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, China. Also, but I mean something. Maybe I don't remember exactly all the videos in the case of Elias, but the question of settings like costumes, traditional costumes, should they respect akyns in all our countries, the same setting, like I don't know, to perform in philharmonics or outside. The question of traditional national costumes. Should they respect, let's say, such kind of conventions? Is it something that people are also expecting or not? Is it something that we should consider as cultural, folkloric, or imposed? I don't know. Is it a part of the performance or not? No, if I have a lot of remarks, I guess I will write down something that I will send everyone later within a week. We can go back on these ideas, on these remarks. That there is something, I guess, in something common, but I guess it's common to all your presentations. The question of language and the question of space. So, for example, like I guess you said something like, if you speak in the frame of akyn, there's no problem, let's say on the stage. But if you speak, if the same person, the same akyn speaks on the public space, then for the same words, maybe they can have problems. So this is something really interesting. But the adaptation of language, depending on the space, I guess that's something we can dig in. Also, something you mentioned, Akyla, with Jan, and it is something I saw, especially for Manas, but I know it exists for akyn and Aitysh in Kyrgyzstan. The question of trainings. So basically, how
this old oral tradition is nowadays transmitted, let's say, to the young generation? Do we have the system of master students, so Ustad Shakert? Хорошо, but who are the masters? Who are the students? Who pays? Also, that's a good question. Who pays for that? The state, a private organization, NGO, so on. And also, coming back to this question of language, or at least contents, très bien, what do they learn? How do they learn? What can they say? Since we have seen in this presentation, and I will take also the example of the presentation of Ilyas, is that it seems that Akyn are poets, of course, but they can speak about absolutely everything. So not only political problems, social issues, but also they can serve as pedagogues, instructors to the people, like to speak about state budget, inflation in a language a little bit poetic, but a language that everyone is able to understand. So that's super interesting. Let's say the malleability, the adaptability of Akyns. And I would like to check if it is still something that they learn in such kind of trainings or not. Maybe Akyns, since you mentioned this concept of resistance, okay, we have female and male Akyns. Could be interesting when we speak about resistance to what, against who. So of course we can mention, let's say, the state, or at least specific people or representatives, I would say, like for example the president, ministers, and so on. But can we, or depending on the gender, can we have different different discourse? Like are women that harsh, I would say, against the political power or not? Or maybe they are mostly not exactly framed, but they will maybe concentrate on questions mostly related to gender, for example, the rights of women in Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, or they will be also able to be up to men's words, what we have corruption, etc. Are they able to do that? Or I mean, let's say, is the speech, the improvised speech during Aitysh framed by gender? If the question is understandable like that. So, what after maybe related with audience, Jan also, maybe Ilyas, it is something, it will be hard for us, but we have rural countryside, sorry, and urban Aitysh. Does it change also the contents or not? I guess there is a connection with the audience, the demographic, and so on. Jan, also maybe something, Akyns already mentioned it, but the spiritual connection, I would say, because I read this this PhD dissertation of Mustafa Joshkun. I can send the file to you if you need. I mean, this is the original dissertation. It's not the book he published later, but he said that according to the Kyrgyz Akyn he interviewed, he said that no, contrary to Manaschi, we do not have a specific dar, kasiet. We do not have this spiritual connection. I mean, it is just a kind of talent, or it is something we are working on. While Manaschis all the time claim that they receive a dream, so ayan, or such kind of things. So maybe in China, it could be nice to see if over time, I would say from where you can, let's say let's say in the past also, if you can have a look, a kind of diachronic observation of this over times, like if this question of spirituality was raised over time, let's say from the 1950s until today. But because I know that the studies of Manas in China, in Xinjiang, started in 1950s, and they were stopped during the revolution, cultural revolution in the 70s, 80s, and they started back right after. So maybe with Aitysh, you will observe exactly the same period of studies. What you said, voice bridge also. we spoke a lot about voice, like the akyn is a voice. With Elias, we, I mean, we can discuss about that, of course, but we said in the title, like a voice for rent. So that's quite interesting also, is that, I mean, who pays the akyn, and if it is, let's say, a national state organized Aitysh, does it mean that Akyns should not speak about this or that, So where is the censorship in it? And bridge, so it means that we have this figure of someone who is between, let's say, the people, let's say, an audience, a population, and a patron. So patron, the one who organized, let's say, the possibility for the akyn to speak in public. That's very interesting to see that the akyn is a kind of representative. The question is still representative of whom exactly? Sorry, I speak a lot, but that was super interesting. Jan, when you mentioned both akyns like Akyt, Ulim Juli, and Tanjaruk Joydulu, I immediately compared with two monasteries we have in Kyrgyzstan, like Sagambay Rozbakov for Akyt and Karalayev for Tanjaruk, in the sense that one was born in during imperial times, but passed away in the first years of the Soviet Union times in the 1930s, or Rozbakov. And Sayakbay was born later, so in 1894, and died in 1952, or no, 72, if my memory is good. And we observe mostly the same thing, is that Sagambay was considered as a religious person, and used to depict Manas as a religious character. And Karalayev was not. We have Manas who is body character, a bit free, Chonjindi, voilà, such kind of things. And my question was, do we have texts, recorded texts of these akyns? And also, let's say, still on this topic, you show a picture of some books. You told us that they were published, but I mean the book cover is in Chinese. My question is that can we find original Kazakh language Aitysh in China, or only Chinese translations also? And maybe you know, but in China they used to say that Manas is one of the 3 Chinese epics. I mean, I can find you the original Chinese quote, no problem. I have just a question if they do the same with Aitysh. Maybe they don't have the same importance, but do they speak about Aitysh like, no, it is a Chinese tradition? Why? Because we find it in, let's say, in the territory of China. Or is it something which is mostly ethnic, like, no, because we have minorities performing such kind of traditions in China? So, I mean, what's exactly the position, the stance of the communist central state, Communist Party in China about this? Also, don't hesitate to bring back books if you can. Yes, but I am quite interested in, do we have records? What's the official discourse on such traditions? You already said, of course, that we have something staged, heritage style. So yes, something quite folkloristic in China. That's interesting, is that can we also think about such an evolution in Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan? Okay, we mentioned resistance, we mentioned criticism, we mentioned, let's say, the fact that the akyn is a voice, mostly a voice against or for something and somebody. But what's in terms, I don't know, in terms of quantity or frequency, what's exactly the place of, to use Jan's terminology, of staged performances, Aitysh, in Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan? So that can be interesting. We have in mind, all of us, we have in mind, and this is, let's say, the common point of all our presentations, like, okay, we have 2 guys they will fight with words, and maybe they will say some bad things, let's say, about the government and the power. Okay, but is it the main? Is it the only way of Aitysh today, or we have other, I would say, other aspects? So that's also a question. And to finish, maybe Ilyas, Akela, you used in your article and in your presentation data from Oxus Society about, let's say, protests and so on. I guess the problem we have now is that since 2020 or 21, we don't have updated data about that. No, I mean several explanations. Maybe Oxus Society is no more financed or whatever. But also, I guess we have to look for information, maybe to do this in our own. So yes, maybe can we still observe microcredit protests today? I guess we have to dig in the media online and so on. Can we link that, let's say, to Aitysh also? Aitysh are still up to date in terms of social issues or not, or a little bit late compared to that. And finally, yes, I love this this concept of trust. Can it be, let's say, a new possible approach to the study of Akyn and Aitysh? So basically, the one who speaks is the one we trust in. So that's I mean, the word trust is super strong, and also by the end of the presentation, you connected it to the sanctity of money. So I mean, as you said, I guess it was the objective of the bank, like to use someone the audience, the population will trust. Why? Because Bayan Akhmatov, the Akyn, is speaking in Kyrgyz, is using specific, maybe simple words to explain financial concepts. I lost myself, but voila, it is maybe someone we want to trust without questions. So that can be something quite interesting to study also. Finally, also, Ilyas, yes, it's something, and I guess Akyla also, we can use that. It is something we have to study. Is in this video you showed, but we have two Akyns, one female, one male, but you can see that each of them is the representative of, I would say, maybe stereotypes, cliché, or maybe reality. That's up to you. One male, the man who is mostly outside working, earning a salary, and the woman who seems to work inside, taking care of kids, food, and so on, and who is spending the money. So do we have also cliché, stereotypes? Is it reality? So I guess it goes back to my question to you, Akyla, is that female Akyn, do they destroy such kind of stereotypes, or do they use them in a funny way, or with irony, or do they stick to them? And also we come back to this question of what's the reception? What's the reception of the audience of such kind of videos, speech, discourse, criticism, and so on. So, voila, so I mean, just a lot of remarks, questions to you all, since we are all dealing with a very rich topic that we can expand, let's say, in different ways. So, я все. So, item, все хорошо. So voilà, maybe if you want to maybe quickly answer some remarks, or I can send you maybe a more formal, worked, let's say, text, and we can speak about that later. But what I mean, I was inspired, I would say so. Kassiet Keldi, and hopla, I said everything. So. What that?
Yeah, I have so many like I jotted down so many ideas and notes. That was so informative and insightful, and you highlighted some of the very interesting aspects like resistance towards what? Religion, gender, regime, patriarchy. Yeah, I just don't know whether this is the time and space to discuss all of this now, or how do you have time? You're muted, Julian.
Sorry. No, maybe I guess it's late already for you and Jan. For Elias and me, it's time for dinner. No, I mean, let's. You can take that as food for thoughts. Maybe you need. Maybe we all need time, let's say, to have a rest and to come back to that a bit later. But no, it's already nice if you find it useful and interesting. So I mean, that's the most important.
Definitely. Yes.
No, I mean, it's. No, I mean, what I have Jan in China, so I forced him to work a little bit, and he gave us so many things. With Elias, no, that's no presentation. We have to seriously update, and so I am responsible also for that. And you provided a very, you give me this article, and I was reading it, and your presentation was super nice, and so yes. So what I mean, no, I mean for today, we, as I told you, it was just a kind of working session to present our respective works and research, and for me also to think also a little bit, like to maybe to give you some insights. So voilà. But yes, I mean that's okay. Everyone is already maybe tired, but we can willingly, we can organize something a bit later about that. We can.
Yeah, that would
also,
be great.
let's maybe let's have some collaborative things or whatever. And also, let's not forget that maybe next year, this summer, they will organize a kind of local CES conference, I hope, in Central Asia. Why not? It would be nice also to organize such a panel again. So maybe with updated things. And maybe more people, why not, over the same topic. So voilà.
If I may say few things. First of all, Julian, you don't have to apologize that you forced me to work or something. Actually, it was my dream to do this kind of research about aitys and akyns in China. I wrote my bachelor thesis during the time, and at the time, I just didn't know what will come and how things will be. And so I kind of, thanks to you and thanks to this panel, I could also fulfill my dream. This I say like very honest. You ask about books. I have one book here. As you can see, it's like in Kazakh language. So definitely there are now like more books produced in this like Arabic Kazakh script in China than in Chinese, but it's not easy to get them. I was in many bookstores, and mostly they had like the, like just language books for people in like smaller cities. And this was only one bookstore. And when I wanted to buy it, it was like, why you want to buy this? You don't understand it. Probably you don't know anything about it. So I kind of had to like communicate a little bit with the staff, but finally I got these books. Definitely, there's also good question, as you mentioned, to see more the legacy of Tanjarik and Akit. Of course, there are books which they produced, but I think this is like another topic. I just wanted to mention this. Thank you again for your remarks. I think for all of us, it was very helpful. And I'm also very happy that despite of the fact that we all are like in different countries, different time zones, the connection was good, and hopefully we all could enjoy and get inspired by ourselves. So thank you, Julian.
Thank you too, Jan. Thank you very much. Tak. Where is Elias? Is he okay?
Well, thank you. I just wanted to say, yeah, Julian, I mean, it boils down to the fact that we need to definitely update our project, take it further. Thank you, Akala. It was super insightful, and many things that your research actually, you know, showed completes this idea of trust that I embark on. I myself come from the from economics discipline, and many things that you talked about a little bit. I mean, of course, I mean, I don't have this really in-depth knowledge about that. So I try to really be as you know, as precise as possible in my presentation. But there are many things to shed light on. But yeah, Yana, about China, it was fascinating. And my only question was, maybe we can exchange it a little bit later. Was there, I mean, is there Kyrgyz? Because you talked about Kazakh, right, Akyns, but there's also a Kyrgyz autonomous region in China. I wonder if you ever came across the Kyrgyz, you know, presenting the Aitysh, and was there a stark difference between Kazakh and Kyrgyz? That's just a question out of curiosity that I have. Well, thank you for your wonderful presentations.
Thank you very much. So maybe let's maturate, let's cultivate, let's grow up such kind of ideas. Let's see what outcomes we'll have. Yes, I will not torture anyone any further, so it's okay. So again, thank you very much. So you made it possible. I mean, we started from scratch, so it was nice that we made it. And thanks a lot for your very interesting, insightful presentations again. Thanks that you could find time also in your different time zones to attend today's session. So I repeat, give me time I can write down all my ideas in a more formal way. And I guess let's stay in tune, all together, connected, so that we can help one another and maybe continue developing this topic. Voila, and yes, as Daniel wrote in the chat, let's wait for the announcement of maybe the next CES conference. I hope in Central Asia. It could be nice to gather there, let's say live, in flesh, not only online. Voila, so thank you very much also, Daniel, to make it possible today for your organization of this session, for undertaking, let's say, all the technical issues and things. Okay, so what? Sure, let's close the session. So thank you very much again. And puis, take care of yourselves, of your health. Enjoy, let's say, where you are, what you are doing. That was nice. I mean, you are in Japan, Kyrgyzstan, China. So that's cool. So voila. And let's cultivate, let's say, this love of words and metaphors, like our favorite Akyns, of course. Voilà, très bien. Allez, sûr.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Let's stay in touch.
Yes.
And
Thank
that's
you.
all.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
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 Bye-bye, Jan. See you.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you for everything, really. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.